So let's add a bass line to the drum pattern that we've got on the go here. Need to move over to a different group. Doesn't matter which one. So again, for argument's sake, I'm going to select B. You can see we've got a complete empty load of 16 sound slots here. I'm going to load a bass instrument onto one of these sound slots. So to do that, again, just pick a pad, pick a sound slot, doesn't matter which one. Let's just, for argument's sake, go for number 6. Press browse. And this time, instead of browsing for a group, which would be button number 2, we're browsing for a specific sound. So we're just going to load one sound onto one sound slot. We need to make sure that sound is selected. And then using rotary control number 1, just again, make sure that sound is selected. So Maschine comes with a load of these things called sounds, which are essentially sampled instruments. So it will be, for example, an audio sample of a synthesizer that's been loaded into Machine's inbuilt sampler, and then we can play that audio sample as if it was a real synthesizer. So, like I say, Maschine comes with loads of these. You can also use third-party VST, Audio Unit, and Artas plugins, and it also works really well with, obviously, all the native instruments as well. Things like Reactor, battery, everything like that. So that's rotary control number 1. I've selected sound. Under the bank column, I'm going to select instruments. Under the type column, I'm going to go for bass. And this time under subtype, and there's loads of different types to choose from. I'm just going to go for analog. And then using rotary control number 5, I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to pick this one called Simply Deep and hit the load button. Nice deep bass sound there. You'll notice that when you hit the pad, you're only given one pitch of note. But what we can do, as we saw in the first video, is zoom in on that one pad, that one sound slot, and use the 16 pads as if it were a keyboard. Obviously, this is where, if you do have a MIDI keyboard, then your life's going to be made a lot easier, a separate MIDI keyboard, and you can just trigger that sound slot using your MIDI keyboard. But in the absence of a MIDI keyboard, like I say, you can use the pads. And to access keyboard pad mode, or hold down the button that says pad mode, then you've got the option, button number 2, keyboard. You might see me use the shortcut for that, which is holding shift and pressing pad mode. And that enters and exits keyboard mode. If you hold down pad mode, you can change the octave that you're working in. So at the moment, you can see LCD screen 2, C1 to C2, the octave C1 to C2. That's C1, that's C2. You want to go up and down. Buttons 5 and 6 move you up and down by a semitone. And buttons 7 and 8 change the octave. So I'm happy with that octave. I'm going to leave it as that. I'm going to take my finger off pad mode. So over on group A, we've got all our drums. On B, we've got our bass sound. But just let me come out of keyboard pad mode. You can see we've only taken up one sound slot there. So it's possible to have 16 different instruments loaded onto this group B. And obviously you can go into keyboard mode for each of those sounds. And that is, again, just one group, and you've got a further 6. So there's a huge number of instruments that you could have loaded into your Maschine project. So let's record a bass line. Back into pad mode, keyboard mode. I'm going to select pattern, hold down the pattern button, hit number 1. So as with the drums, the default pattern length is 1 bar. We can change this though to make it longer or shorter if we want. Hold down pattern. And then rotary control number 1 selects the length in bars. I've just made that 2 bars long. Let's leave it as 2 bars. You can change the increment that goes in, so you could maybe make that pattern 1.5 bars if you wanted. We'll leave the denominator as 1 bar for the purposes of this module. Obviously, every little tweak like that you can make with the machine, we would go into in more detail on the 4-week online course. I'm just going to hit play. I'm just going to, first of all, have a play along to this drum beat that I've got going. And the first thing that I'm going to do is play in the rhythmic pattern that I want, and then we can start to worry about melodies if needs be. So I'm happy with something like that. Hit record. And then with none of the notes selected this time, I can hold shift and press quantize, and it'll quantize all those notes. Hold mute. I'm just going to mute the drums. Obviously the other way you can do that is by holding solo and pressing B. So let's look at changing the melody. Now, 2 intervals. If we're calling this note that I played in the root note, then there's 2 intervals that work really well. The first is by going up in pitch by 3 semitones. That's called a minor third. What I'm going to do is use the mouse this time. Sometimes it is actually easier and quicker to use the mouse rather than machine hardware. We can do it using the hardware, but sometimes it's quicker using the mouse. I'm going to get some of these notes and drag them up by 3 semitones. Well, semitone is just 1 slot further up the grid in this case. 2, 3. Another interval that works well is something called a minor 7th, and that is 2 semitones down from the root note. So let's give that a go. So I'm happy with that pattern, but I'm maybe not so happy with the sound. So what I can do, still in browse mode, make sure that you've got the correct attributes selected. Instruments, bass. And then you can select either a specific subtype, or if you leave the subtype clear, then we're looking at every single bass here. So we could maybe just audition different machine sounds in place of the one that we've got loaded up by selecting it and then just hitting load. Or you could use these previous and next buttons 5 and 6. You can hear it's still playing the same pattern, just the instrument or the sound that it's playing is slightly different. I'm a bit more happy with that one that's called basement. Come out of browse mode. Let's hear that with the drums. So hold mute and unmute the drums. that's adding a baseline to your machine project.